We're very excited today because it's the Bowyers Wood BioBlitz #1. Yes, it's a lovely sunny day in June. It's put a smile on everyone's face, and we've come here for a BioBlitz. Now, what's a BioBlitz? We're going to try and identify as many different species in this one place at this one time. And when I say species, I mean everything. So we're going to be looking at plants, fungi maybe if we find them, obviously birds, mammals, invertebrates, insects, that sort of thing. It's going to be a really fantastic day, and the parking is on top of me, and the first aid is something that I'm going to need by about 11 o'clock, when a number of young people have prodded the moths a little bit too much. We set a moth trap overnight. That's going to be exciting. I'm just about to go and get some small mammal traps. We're really going to town here on our BioBlitz. It's going to be great. And I've got an Elastoplast somewhere in my pocket. We consider health and safety very seriously at Ecotalk. Okay, good morning everyone, and thank you for coming to the Bowyers Wood first BioBlitz. So we've got a number of different experts. Some of them are specialists, some of them are generalists. We like both of those. Specialists, obviously those people who may have a profound knowledge of the grasses. Please test them on the grasses, because grasses are quite tricky to identify. You've got to look at something called the ligule. I haven't looked at a ligule for some time, so don't test me on the grasses. But then also a general knowledge is really important. But the key thing is, when I say that we have people who are experts here, we acknowledge that we've always got more to learn, and that's the greatest joy of being a naturalist. We fuel our curiosity and our fascination by knowing that we will go to our graves and we still won't know it all, but we want to. So please share any information, ask questions. Ask me a question. If I don't know the answer, I'll be very happy to say I don't know the answer to that, but I'm keen to find out. And so one of the things we did last night was I ran a moth trap here, and we haven't emptied it yet. It's heaving with moths, which we'll go through. I won't remember the names of them because I haven't been mothing recently, and there'll be some in there that I've probably never seen before. So in that case, we turn to the books, the textbooks, or we turn to someone else who has a greater knowledge, and that's part of our community building exercise. We like the idea that we're all in a process of finding out more about nature. So that's our mission today. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be writing down all of the things that we identify. So not just the butterfly, we'll try and see which species that is, and then we're going to keep a note of it. And the plan is that at some stage in the future, we're all going to come back, and then we're going to have another count. And we're going to see whether all of the work that we've been doing here with the profits from Ecotalk have paid dividends in increasing the amount of the diversity of species that we have here. That's our mission. So many of the things that you might see today, we won't have counted yet, because we've only really been working here for a year. This is our first sort of proper summer. And what we need are these baseline surveys so that we know what we've got here, and then we know what we can focus on to help, and the way that we can modify this landscape to improve it for other things.
And then in between your sessions, they'll go for about 45 minutes. In between those, you'll come back here and we will work to update our live species board. So hopefully that'll be full and thriving at the end of today, is the hope.
We set some small mammal traps last night. In fact, it was rather like an England score.
Oh.
So it was empty traps 5, full traps 1.
I wondered why you hadn't mentioned it.
No. So we have one small mammal in a trap, and we ought to do that sooner rather than later, because
Yes.
we don't want to keep it in there too long.
Well, I'm going to put it on the board.
Okay. Well, we haven't identified it yet.
Oh. Is it,
No, I haven't got it out. No, I haven't got it out. It's there. We could get it out now. Should we do that now?
Yeah, let's do it now.
Okay, let's get it out.
Come to my garden. So that's all good.
Just got to get hold of it properly. When you handle these animals, you can't pick them up by their tail, because their tail will be stripped of its skin. So what you do is you pick them up holding their back, one of the back legs like that, and then you let it sit on your finger like this. And there we are. And you can tell it's a wood mouse because it's got very large ears, very large eyes, and very large whiskers. It's principally nocturnal. And it's got that clean line between the brown and the white belly underneath. So basically this is an animal that's quite arboreal, climb up in bushes, feeds on fruit, but also eat insects as well. And it's widespread and quite fecund, so they reproduce rapidly throughout the course of the year. And you really have to think of this as a sort of a rodent burger for all of the other predators that live here. Because obviously the tawny owls this year that nested here had really large numbers of young, and that was due to the abundance of these and bank voles that would have been living here, maybe a few shrews as well. So Yeah, and those, look at those massive radar dish ears. Bear in mind this is an animal that's listening to higher frequency sounds than we can hear, and it's doing its best to listen out for those owls which would be swooping down. Eyes obviously large, as I said, for its nocturnal vision, but also don't underestimate the whiskers, which are constantly whisking, as you can see there, and they go into a root which is highly innervated. So imagine a super sensitive pore, as it were, that those whiskers go into, and they repeat them. The whisking process isn't random, they're not just twitching. They go through a series of cycles with their whiskers, and they're obviously able to detect, not just by physical contact, you know, anything that's around it. They don't have to touch things, but they can feel the airflow moving. And so those are, again, extraordinarily sensitive. And they have that long tail here for balance when they're climbing. That's not prehensile. They don't, unlike harvest mice, they don't wrap it around branches when they're climbing. And this is a small one. So this would have been an animal that's been that was born earlier this year. They do get a little bit bigger than this. But yeah, charming animals. Anyway, look, let me put him back in the bag. Yeah. Take him back down to his or her spot in the woods. That'll be my first job. Okay, there we go.
Lovely.
We can tick off wood mouse. We previously caught them here, haven't we? So
perfect. We're going to pop it on our board. Yeah. This is our first species of the day.
Have a wander, see what you will find. Okay, what can you see?
Brambles.
Brambles, okay.
Hazel?
Hazel.
Just the hazelnut there, the green.
Okay. Flowers. What might be that? Bees. Pollinators. Right, what's that? That's the dead needles off a Scots pine. Okay, this was a good find, which you found, which everyone loves the name of it. King Alfred's cakes, because it looks like a burnt bun.
What actually is that?
It's a fungus. Yeah. It's a fungus. Do you want to feel it?
Yeah.
It's very light.
One, yeah.
And you can use it as kindling for fires, and it will hold a flame, heat within it. Any guesses from around the room?
Bulrush.
It's a rush. No, it's not a bulrush. Well, some people call it reed grass. It's a rush. Which one is it?
Grass.
must be soft.
Soft, because I'm doing this to it. But this one, as I run it up, my hand up here, I don't encounter any lumps. And that tells me it's smooth rush.
The moth trap we set last night, and it's covered with a sheet, because in the morning, if you've attracted a large number of moths to a trap like this, a large number of birds will come and eat them. And when we arrived this morning, it had already been covered, but there was a blackbird hopping around, taking up all of those which had landed outside the trap on the ground. So that's why it's covered with a sheet. And before we open it, I'm just going to show you a couple of the species that we've got here. This one, I'm going to need someone's finger. Who's got a finger? Okay, let's have 2 fingers then. Right, firstly, let's have your finger. You put your finger there, like that, and keep your finger still. And then you keep your finger. Hold on, there you go. No, I'm going to show you what it is in a moment. Right, there we are, hold your finger nice and still. Okay, so this is a common moth that we come at this time of year, and it's called, not very imaginatively, because although some of the moths have fantastic names, my favourite being mouse poo, a lot of them just are named in the way they look. So this one's called Buff-tip, because it's got a buff tip. But just look at the way that that moth is remarkably camouflaged. And not only is it just the colours of its camouflage, it's where the colours are that make it so important. Because what it's trying to do is look like a little piece of broken birch twig. So here's a broken birch twig, which I collected earlier. And if you put that alongside the moth, you can see, look, it's got the same buff tip where it's broken, and it's got the bit at the other end like that. So the reason that this moth is sitting on your finger like that is because it's completely convinced that you can't see it. because it's so well camouflaged, it thinks it's impossible for anything or anyone to spot me because I look like this, a piece of broken birch twig. And of course, that works because during the daytime, these moths don't normally perch on Rafe's finger and Eva's finger. What they do is they rest on twigs and on the bark, and therefore birds don't find them. So they're quite a common species that are on the wing at this time of year. Sometimes they vary in size. Well, if you've got a small one, sometimes they will grow even a little bit longer than that, and that will be dependent, of course, on how well the caterpillar has fed. This is not the growth stage of this animal. Caterpillar does all the growing, pupates. This comes out, it's got two jobs. One is to disperse, then the other is to mate and lay eggs. So that's why they're winged. And at this time of year, some of the moth species don't even feed. So look at that. That is an amazing piece of camouflage, isn't it? What a triumph of evolution that is. There's another one in here, which just to show you the diversity. And this one's quite still, and they can be very beautiful. I'll pass that one round. This is dark arches. Now, there are in the UK about 55 species of butterfly. You can push it to 60 if you include some of the migrants. But when it comes to large moths, things like these animals, then we're looking at about 800 species. Okay. Now, let me just try and get this out without disturbing too many, because there's a really special one here. We all like these ones. Let's leave them on there for the moment, because that one might fly. And this one is a Poplar Hawk-moth. And you can see that its underwings are when it's at rest here, are pointed further forward than its hind wings. And what it's hiding beneath that with there, and I'll try and do it without disturbing. If I lift that up, you'll see that it's got red markings on the underside. You just catch a glimpse of that. And you see the way it's flicking there. That's because it thinks I'm going to eat it, and it's flashing those red bits of its wings at me. Actually, I've had a hot chocolate this morning. I'm not that hungry, so I'm not going to eat that one. And there's a better conditioned footman. There you see that little one there, the grey one with the yellow edges, the one that flew away. Let's move on to another sexy moth before we get into all of those. And then this one here, that beautiful pink, green and white one, look at that. That is Elephant Hawk-moth. Elephant Hawk-moth. And the thing about that one is that's quite a small Elephant Hawk-moth, but you may know the Elephant Hawk-moth caterpillar, which is, without exaggeration, is about the same size as my little finger. So there you see that the eating stage of the animal actually gives rise to a moth which is much, much smaller.
My favourite thing was the pink moth.
What else have we got in here? Oh, look at that one. There's another beautiful moth in there. I'll tell you what, let's just pass these around and then you can all have a look at them. Most of them are fairly static. And there's a mixture of things like this. This is a carpet, okay? And then this one is one of the underwings. So there's a whole range of different species in there. Let you pass that round, you can have a look.
Covering more about the moths. I didn't know much about them, and to see them up close and see the diversity of moths was very appealing to me and interesting.
Oh look, here's a poplar hawk. Let's try and get this one out on the finger. Right, okay. You haven't held one yet. Right, here we go. There we are. There we are. Now it's vibrating. And it's doing that because it's going to warm its wing muscles up so that it can fly away.
He isn't dead.
Okay. Oh, he's not dead. No, he's come back to life, the footman. The shame has passed. So yes, that's what it's doing. It's vibrating its wing muscles so that they're at an operating temperature before it can fly away. So before it does that, have a twist it around and have a look, because I can see the red on the underside of its wings there. Look at that. What a marvellous animal. Now, one of the other things you can see, if you look at its head, although they're vibrating rapidly, not now, you can see the antennae, and it's got feathered antennae. And this is the way that one of the ways we separate butterflies from moths, because butterflies have clubbed antennae, so they're like a stalk with a bulb on the end, whereas moths have these feathery antennae like that. And these are extraordinarily sensitive organs. And sometimes in some of the moth species, like that black arches, I think, this one, just folded them up now. You can tell the difference between the males and the females because the male's antennae are more feathery. And that's because the female, when she's ready to mate and lay her eggs, releases a chemical called a pheromone into the air, and the male moths use their antennae to detect it, and some of them can detect that from kilometres away.
I think that what surprised me the most was the moth that was disguised as snapstick.
I liked about the moth thing that I got to hold one of the moths. It just settled on my finger.
So I took 3 samples this morning. One of them was from upstream of the beaver enclosure, and it's very, very silty, very kind of red and iron, lots of sediment. And then we took another sample from inside the beaver enclosure, and then the last one just here after the beaver enclosure. And it's very interesting to see the difference, how it looks like the leaky dams are kind of filtering some of that sediment, and the samples are so much cleaner. So it'll be lovely to see, because they've only been here a few months, so it'll be lovely to see whether it changes the invertebrates. Although this morning we found 74 in just those 3 samples in total. It's quite a big number, but it would be nice to see how many of those were from upstream, how many of them were from the middle, and how many of them were from downstream. But yeah, so super interesting. There's so much life there. It's really, really cool. I love that. It's like pond dipping.
Pond dipping, where there's a massive difference between the 3 samples that were taken, and that was exciting to see how the beavers were already affecting the wildlife and the water pollution around us.
Yeah, I've had fun, and my favourite part of today, I think, was doing the pond dipping. And I found a creature there which no one had discovered that morning. I was so excited because it had very, very long antennae.
Older fly larva.
Yeah.
So is that in a minute?
Yeah.
So yeah, things like these dragonflies will prosper, because of the beavers' activity. Because the first thing they're going to do is take all of these trees down that are around the edge, all of the alder and the hazel and things like that, and that will let more light into the river, which means that you'll get weed growing there, which means you'll get more oxygen in the water, which means that it will be clearer and fresher, and that will, spice up that part of the ecosystem. But then it also means you'll have fringing vegetation, so all the rushes and reeds and sedges and irises which grow from the river outwards, which is healthy, and then bankside vegetation. And that will all attract more insects in, which are food for the adults of these dragonflies. Mm-hmm. So dragonflies are one of the indicator species that we use for beaver reintroductions, basically. So knowing what we've got here, that's obviously one of the larger hawkers or something, will be important, because we should definitely see an increase in dragon and damselflies over the next couple of years. And they're already busy, as you see, so, And light, it's basically just light. Basically, they're bringing that.
Well, they're doing a good job of that, aren't they?
Yeah,
they're doing their felling.
I think nature's really important, because without it the world would be bad, and trees help us breathe.
The water where we were finding all of the insects and stuff, because I thought that was really cool, because most of them I've never seen before, so it was nice to see different varieties of animals.
There's a shrimp. How many shrimp do we have?
They're kind of spread out everywhere.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's about 10 in this one. Oh, wow, amazing.
So obviously in a wood like this, it's really, really difficult to see the birds because they're in the dense trees. So most of the bird recording is done by listening for the songs and calls. So let's have a listen. Chief chat singing. Chief chat. Into it. Earlier on we had flycrow singing in these trees.
Surprised me. Well, Chris Packham's awesome, gotta say, a big fan. I watched all of Spring Watch for 3 weeks, so I was keen to see him in person. And I think the great work and the amount of species, invertebrates, birds that are here, so testament to the work that everyone's doing here.
Has today helped with my view on biodiversity? I think it has. It's what's great is you're meeting other people who are on the same page as you.
I came here today because I really like going in the forest with my mum, and because it's just really fun and I love seeing all the animals which are all around.
I joined Ecotalk because I'm an environmental scientist and I'm interested in ecology. It's a good opportunity to contribute and to be part of a community.
We live locally and we're really excited to hear this was actually on our doorstep and actually happening. So to be part of it's really exciting. It's been really lovely. We've heard some goldcrest singing, firecrest singing. We've seen the beaver chip-ins and where they've stripped some wood and how they've deforested slightly an area ready for the new life to come through. I feel that I've actually been part of it for a day, which is actually really rewarding. So thank you for allowing us to do that.
I come today to help do the science counting. I spotted a lot of animals. I like about nature that it's peaceful, there's nothing busy happening, you don't have to do anything, and like everything's there. And that they're all just unique. And
I've been brought up around nature, so knowing that I'm going to have still be able to have a nice space for when I'm older and there's still going to be nature around was really nice to hear and stuff.
I think it is wonderful because you're helping nature and just protecting everything which lives in this environment.
Just being able to be in an ancient woodland, but also being reminded to be more observant and how much we've seen in terms of all the plants and listening to the birds and there's so much more in our natural environment that we ever notice.
I'm a beaver.
Oh, I'm a butterfly.
Are you?
Yes.
Does that suit your personality?
Yes.
That's good because I chew a lot of wood and I love to make a damn mess of things.
Oh,
look, I tell you what, let's unmask ourselves, right?
Big reveal.
Go on then, points out of 10 for today.
Oh, I think it was a 10 out of 10,
I think it was a 10 out of 10.
I think it was brilliant.
It was good, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And look, the board speaks to a great deal of spotting done.
It does indeed.
Yeah. So I added sparrowhawk and nuthatch onto the 17
Oh, brilliant.
birds.
And actually, I think we need to update this because I just added beavers to our mammals
Of
list.
course, top
We
work.
can't forget about the beavers. We didn't see them this morning, but we do know they're absolutely here, so we can change that.
Had a minnow.
We did have a minnow.
Added a category. And 2 species of amphibian or reptiles. So we had common toad, I saw that.
Common toad, yes.
And common lizard.
Common lizard, yeah, it was just down
Common
here
lizard.
actually.
Excellent stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, brilliant.
So yeah, I think that's a good start. Plus the fact that we've got to update the plants and we've got to add the moths onto that. Or did you add the moths?
We added the moths.
You've already added them?
I've added the moths, yeah. The moths was brilliant.
Moths, I love the moths.
I think everyone loved the moths.
Yeah.
They're so colourful, aren't they? You don't
Yeah.
think that they're going to be so exciting, but they really
And
are.
unlike butterflies, which are impossible to handle at all without harming them, obviously,
Yeah.
they just sit on people's fingers.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And those young people with the Elephant Hawk and the Buff-tip.
I missed out on that, I think.
Sorry, yeah, they were loving it.
Oh, I bet.
Sorry, yeah, they were loving it.
Well, we'll have to reconvene for some more moth trapping
And
next year.
Indeed,
Yeah.
indeed. But I mean, aside from all of the natural history, which was great, everyone enjoyed themselves.
Everyone had a great time. We did walks around the beaver enclosure. That was brilliant. Everyone loved that. Saw all their brilliant progress, all their coppicing, their dams. Yeah, everyone was very impressed.
So good. Local people came, which was great because this is their community after all.
Exactly, yeah. Local community and Ecotalk customers. That's what it's all about.
Who basically had funded what we've been doing.
Exactly.
Can't complain, can you?
No. So yeah, brilliant.
Good
We've
start.
done our sums. We've uploaded to iRecord.
Yeah.
And we come back same time next year.
And hopefully we'll see more. I've got to be fair.
Yeah.
The bird total
I know.
is low.
It
But
is
listen,
low.
It's because it's really
very hot.
Right?
Very hot.
If we came back on a day when it wasn't sweltering like this,
Yeah.
earlier in the day a bit as well, we'd get a much better bird total.
Yeah,
I think out
so.
of all of the things, that was the only one that really
Yeah,
did.
well, we know from our other surveys that we've got more than 17 birds.
Indeed. Okay, so same time, same place, next year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Look forward to it.